In today's video, I'm going to be discussing how vulnerability is weaponized against people who are going through spiritual abuse, as well as other psychological and non-physical types of abuse, such as narcissistic abuse and emotional abuse. My name is Dr. Felicia, and I'm a licensed psychologist and owner of Skill Set Counseling, where I focus on the treatment of OCD, spiritual abuse, and cultural abuse. So, back to the topic at hand. How can vulnerability be used against people who are going through the types of abuse that I just mentioned? Well, one of the ways that this can occur is through false vulnerability. Being vulnerable with someone is only wise when they are a safe and emotionally healthy person themselves. And people who engage in spiritual abuse, emotional abuse, and narcissistic abuse are neither safe nor emotionally healthy. However, people who are engaging in this type of abuse also want to control and manipulate others. And the way they do this is through trying to create an environment of false vulnerability. One way they can do this is by trying to shame you for not being vulnerable. Here I'm saying things like you're prideful, snobby, stuck up, secretive, things like that. And so you can imagine, and you've probably been, accused of doing those things before. Imagine how that would feel if you're being told that you are these types of things because you don't open up enough. People in those situations would tend to feel like, gosh, maybe I do need to open up more. Maybe I do need to share. And then they start being vulnerable with someone who is not worthy of that vulnerability and can use that information against them. Also, something that an abuser can do to try and create a false dynamic of mutual vulnerability is that they can share true things that really don't matter to them, but that make them look vulnerable. So they are trying to create a sense that they are being vulnerable themselves. So they could share something that appears like they're being vulnerable, but has no effect on them, right? Maybe it's something that doesn't reveal any insecurities about them, or something that they're just fine with other people knowing, okay? Another way that this can happen is by making up or exaggerating stories that will make them look vulnerable. So they can talk about something that might seem a little bit strange to you, because you don't know this person very well. And this is actually part of the grooming process of abuse. But they can, tell you something that seems, wow, this person is so vulnerable. And then as a result, you feel pressure yourself to share so that you can, even the playing field and show that, yeah, I'm a person that can share and whatnot. And so that's one way that abusers can weaponize vulnerability, by creating a false or unreal sense of mutual vulnerability between the two of you. Now, if you're finding this information helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to like this video, comment on it, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and share it with somebody who you think could benefit from it. What this does is it helps YouTube show this video and similar others to people like yourself who would find it beneficial. So if you haven't done so already, please do me a favor, take a moment to like and comment and subscribe. So the first way that I talked about how vulnerability is weaponized through false vulnerability. The second way is through forced vulnerability. While false vulnerability is a more manipulative, indirect, kind of behind the scenes way of weaponizing vulnerability, forced vulnerability is more overt and more direct, okay? And this can happen in situations, in spiritual situations, where maybe people are kind of told that they have to confess things, confess your sins to all the people around you, right? And so this is done kind of as a mandatory thing. If you're going to be part of this congregation or spiritual community, this is what you have to do. Okay. So it's not asking, it's more telling you that this is what you need to do, and shaming people that may be, not willing to do something like that. So they might misquote scriptures or use scriptures against people to tell them that if you don't share these sins with people, then you are a bad person and all this other stuff. And so there's that way of it being forced. And then also just kind of requiring people to share information that is vulnerable. They may say, tell us your life story, even though, you don't really know the people in this congregation or spiritual community very well, right? So you may be forced to, talk about things that are uncomfortable, that are private, things that you wouldn't really share with someone unless they were a close friend. And this is done under the guise of, well, we're all family here and whatnot. And so that is another way that the vulnerability is weaponized, by trying to make you feel like vulnerability is a requirement for being in a spiritual community. And while I think that that can happen later on, it's not right to force that right at the beginning. People should feel vulnerable as a natural result of the conditions of being in a healthy environment. Okay. And so when you are vulnerable to somebody who is an abusive person and who engages in psychological ways of manipulation, whether it's through spiritual abuse, emotional abuse, or narcissistic abuse, they will use that information against you. So let's give an example of, let's say that you tell somebody who is an abusive person, an insecurity. Let's say you say, like, I'm really insecure about my height. I'm really short and I don't like that. The abusive person will use that information against you later on. They may tease you about your height in front of somebody. And then when you tell them privately later that, I didn't appreciate that, or when you look sad or upset about it, they'll say, what's the big deal? Get over it. You're being too sensitive. I was just teasing you, whatever. So they're minimizing what you are going through, and also taking your vulnerability for granted. And so when this happens, it's not just teasing you or minimizing what you're going through. It's basically sending you an indirect message that they are the ones in control and they don't value or respect your honesty and openness. So that's really important to understand that. If they truly valued it, they wouldn't share that and use that against you. Or if it was just something that happened by accident, they would genuinely apologize and not do that again. And it's not only, like maybe in friendship situations or the type of situation that I've described where somebody is being abusive, but they're not necessarily in a leadership or authority position over you. Okay. This can also happen with leaders and people who are in some type of authority. And they can weaponize vulnerability by basically not valuing your need for privacy and respect. So I've heard this several times from people who've been through the spiritual abuse and other types of abuse, that a leader will use information that they were told in confidence, told in private, and tell everyone. Now, of course, people who are abusive like this, they want to maintain this image of being a good and caring and compassionate leader in person. So the way they reveal your information is not going to be blatant. I mean, think about it. If they were like, oh, I was talking to so-and-so the other day and they told me this story about, how they used to be an alcoholic, or whatever it is, whatever private information you're going to share. If they just announce that in a haphazard, blunt, and reckless way, they wouldn't really look like a good leader. But the way that this is used, the way vulnerability is used against you, it is in more subtle and insidious ways. So people have told me before about how they've been a member of some kind of spiritual community or congregation, and the leader will tell their story without using their name or their permission. And so when this happens, a couple of things can happen as a result. One thing is that if other people know enough about that person, they may put two and two together and say, oh, this pastor, this leader was talking about you. And it can be very embarrassing and very hurtful to have information that you have privately shared with someone to come to the surface like that in a very public setting. Okay, so that's one way that can occur. And another way that can occur is they can share the information, like I said, share the information that was not shared, or they weren't given authority or permission to share. They might share it, and they may kind of have like a negative reaction to it. So for instance, let's say you tell a leader that you are really struggling with a particular area. Maybe it's I don't know, being on social media too much, something like that. So let's say you tell this person, hey, I've really had a difficult time. I think I'm addicted to social media. I really need to stop. And then this leader is like, oh, that's okay. People are not perfect. But then when they're up giving their message, they judge people who are addicted to social media. And they may say something like, I was talking to someone the other day and they told me about how they are addicted to social media. And boy, I tell you, their life is a complete mess. And if they would just get it together and not be on social media, think about how much of a better person they would be. They give some kind of very intense and negative judgmental reaction that they did not give you in private, right? And so the way this works is they're basically sending you the message that, look, I'm the one in control here, and I get to do whatever I want with the information you've given me. And so that's another harmful and insidious way that a leader will try to exert even more control and dominance over somebody who is being abused. And another message this can send too is, hey, you better not cross me. I own you and I control you. And when people have been in situations like this, they feel silenced. One thing that I talk about a lot of, with spiritual abuse is that it thrives in silence. And these are also this also happens with emotional abuse and narcissistic abuse. And so what that person is doing at that moment in time, whether they're a leader or they're not a leader, is they're saying, look, I own you and I can take whatever information that you shared with me in the past and use it against you. And so that shames you into being silent because you wouldn't want to cross this person. Maybe they do some other things that you don't approve of or you feel are harmful and you want to tell the truth about it or, bring it to someone's attention. If you do that, you're at risk of being harmed even more because they could just share other information that you've told them or, just come at you while looking like they're an angel to other people. So this is why it's really, really important to be very careful about who you are vulnerable with. And I'm going to cover more of this probably in a later video, but the next time you as an abuse survivor feel like, gosh, I really want to be vulnerable with someone, I want to tell them, wait on that decision. What I would recommend instead is to journal about it. I think that regardless of whatever type of abuse you've been through, journaling is a powerful tool that you can use in your arsenal of recovery. So what I would do is journal about it, write it down and just take some time to think about it and think, okay, who's someone that I could share this information with? Or if this information were to get out, how would I feel? How would I react? So that's really important. And again, the takeaway message I'd love for you to hear from this is don't let anybody ever shame you into being vulnerable. When people do this, they want some kind of like, just they want a reward, rather. They want the reward of being having access to your inner thoughts, emotions, feelings, and insecurities, but they are not going to handle that in a responsible way. They're not going to guard it. They're not going to treasure it. They're not going to respect it. They're going to use it as a way of manipulating you and controlling you and trying to keep you silent about what's going on. So I really want you to remember that and take your vulnerability seriously and guard it. It's a precious thing. For more information and tools to help you along your recovery from spiritual abuse or any other types of psychological abuse that I mentioned in this video, go to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, and click on the button for a free consultation. Or you can also click on the link in the description box and it'll take you to the website. So I'd love to hear from you all in the comment section. How do you feel like vulnerability has ever been weaponized against you? And how do you handle that? And what tips would you have for other people? So again, I want to create a community here where people can learn from one another and feel supported. So please take a moment, if you haven't done so already, to drop a comment in the in down below and just try and be supportive and helpful and share what you've gone through so that other people can learn from it. Okay, so I hope you have a wonderful day that is filled with peace. Bye-bye.